David has introduced our program today. I just have to remember how to use this. I am Tamar Radovsky, and I will be sort of coordinating the program. Mary Jane Ward and Rachel Stern are both professional artists, and they will be talking about their work. I wanted to start out saying a few words about OPAS in general, who we are, what we do, and then we'll turn to each of us. I'll just say a few words about my own work, and then we'll turn to Mary Jane and Rachel. Open for questions and discussion, and we do have a display that we'll be talking about as well. It's a small group, and what we were talking about beforehand is that if you want to interrupt us with questions as we go, that's fine. So we can be, we can do this informally. So I want to start out by just saying a few things about the Ohio Plein Air Society, and I took these photos from our website. We do have a website. It is called theohiopleinairsociety.com, so please check it out. Most of the information I'm going to be talking about is on the website. Who are we? We are artists, art lovers, sharing a common interest in outdoor painting. We paint, draw, on-site, from direct observation, and outdoors. And anyone can become a member. I'm the membership secretary. I've never turned anyone down. You needn't be a practicing artist. You can be an art lover. You can be an art patron. You can be a donor. You could be working at Blick and give us huge donations, painting donations. We love it. So anyone can be a member. What do we do? I apologize for this photo. I had to cut and paste, screenshots, because they wouldn't download from the website. So that's our president, Robin Roberts, who is truncated, split in two, but we won't tell him. He'll be here next week. He'll provide his own photos. We do a lot. We schedule paint-outs, workshops, competitions, group exhibits. We're part of the resurgent plein air movement in the United States. We have members from nearly every county in Ohio and each of the surrounding states. I just got another membership the other day from West Virginia. We have people from New York State. We have people from Indiana, Pennsylvania. So Ohio is really at the heart of it all when it comes to the plein air movement. And there is, and I should say there has been a resurgent plein air movement in the United States. It's one of those events that has just taken off. There's a plein air magazine, there's an annual plein air convention, there are plein air, what do they call them, adult paint camps, where you can go to the Adirondacks or to Maine and paint for a week in wonderful surroundings. I haven't been to those. Have you guys? No. One of our members, Doreen St. John, who paints up in Northeast Ohio, was invited to be one of the instructors at the Plein Air Convention. They have almost 7,000 people show up to this thing with about 150 instructors, workshops, classes, so it's just a week long. It was in San Diego this past April. So what do? We paint. That's actually a photo of Mary Jane. That's a class I was taking with Mary Jane. She didn't wear her hat today, but there she is teaching a class at Whetstone. And we paint some more. There's an example of a plein air painting. It's actually one that I bought at a OPAS auction this past March at the OPAS. I was very excited that I got it. We had an auction. People volunteered paintings, and we could bid for them. We host paint-outs. For example, June 17th in Springfield, Ohio. June 24th in Findlay, Ohio. July 8th is going to be really interesting because we're hooking up with the Indiana PAPA Plein Air Society and painting at the Richmond Museum. I've never been out there, but I'm definitely going to try to make it to that one. So every month we have several official paint-outs. We also have a lot of informal paint-outs. We have a yearly competition. The past 2 years, it's been in Bay Arts, Bay Village, Ohio, up near Cleveland, a 3-day, actually this year it'll be September 28th to October 1st. We have a reception, we have a gallery show, we have 3 days of painting, we have a quick, what's it called? I called it quick paint, but quick draw, where the judges time you for, I think, 2 hours, and you have 2 hours in which to complete a painting. And I think, Mary Jane, you did it last year, and your quick draw painting was more beautiful than any of the ones that you spent hours and hours on. No, I mean, they were all wonderful. They were all wonderful. But somehow, when you've got 2 hours to think through, compose, paint, pull it all together, sometimes you come up with something just really delicious. I was taking a class with my other teacher, whom I adore, and he had us do an exercise just about 2-3 weeks ago. He gave us 10 minutes in which to paint. I think you were there, Roby, weren't you? We had to do 4 10-minute paintings. And I did my 10-minute painting. Actually, I cheated. I did 15 minutes on mine. And then I did the same scene, spent an hour on it. Everyone I show the 2 paintings to, 15-minute one is better. It's loose, it's open, it just sort of came together. So these are the sorts of things we do at the competitions and the paint-outs. Last year's winners, I know this is not a very good photo, but if you go up on the website, you can see the photos in much greater detail. Actually, most of the people who are speaking in this week or next week have one of the winning paintings here. So lots of different categories in which you can win at these competitions. Upcoming shows. So we have this really interesting show coming up at the Rife Gallery in 2018 and the Southern Ohio Museum, Creating Identity from Place. And you will definitely want to see this show. By curated show, what I mean is that the curator, who is the head of the Southern Ohio Museum, Charlotte Gordon, asked us all to submit 2 paintings that we thought might entice her interest. She'll then use those paintings to decide whom to pursue more carefully, and then visit all the studios of the first cut, so to speak. And from the studio visits, she'll pick what she considers to be the very best artists in Ohio plein air. We don't know if it will be 5 artists each with 15 works, or 15 artists with 2 works apiece. We have no idea. It's completely up to her. And we all submitted our paintings. We've heard nothing. And we probably won't hear anything until October, when she sets up the studio visits. And of course, some of us have studios in our living room or basement, garage. She understands that. But that will be a really wonderful show. The show we've had here at the Columbus Museum, the 2017 Best of OPAS show, juried plein air gallery, ends June 18th. If you have not yet seen this show, you need to rush out to the hallway. It's an amazing show. It's that hallway, right? That hallway. I had no idea really how much talent there was in OPAS. I'm just the membership secretary. I take in the checks. But I was the coordinator of the OPAS show, and as the pieces were coming in, I was just blown away. The pieces, and I am going to say they are all for sale. The museum has not made this public, but all the pieces are for sale, and there is a price list at the front desk. And so you've got 2 weeks left in which to buy your original work of art. I want to say just a few words about myself. Membership, as I said, anyone can join. There are advantages, a full lending library of painting DVDs that you can check out and watch and pick up. So some of my own recent work, I consider myself an amateur in comparison to professional artists, but that's one of the nice things about OPAS, is that even amateurs can belong. I mean, I teach at Ohio State, that's my day job. I love to paint. I started painting when I turned 50. I will not tell you how many years ago that was. I started running marathons and painting. That was my midlife crisis. And I would find really beautiful places in my long runs, and I wanted to capture them. And so I started combining the two. It's not that I paint while I run a marathon, but I make a mental note of where I'm passing. And so this is an example of my recent work. In fact, very recent work, as in this past week I was in Brussels. If I move away from here, can you still hear me? So I was in Brussels last week. I just came home late Monday night, and I carry with me wherever I go a sketchbook, watercolor, walnut ink, and I just do these little sketches, and I use them as reference photos for paintings when I come back. I also carry with me a very, very small pochade box. It fits into my carry-on luggage. Painting goes up here. I carry 6x8 or 5x7 panels. I can't do this. Yeah, this one's dry. I brought back a couple of others that are wet. The whole thing folds up, fits into my carry-on luggage. I bring the paint with me in my toiletry bag. We were talking about this because I never check luggage. I haven't checked luggage in 40 years. So I have my quart-sized bag with my little, paints, and then I put a thing of toothpaste and a thing of shampoo and a thing of conditioner. And so when the TSA look at my bag, all they see is those 3 items and assume that everything underneath is toiletries, when in fact it's oil paint. And so I bring this with me around the world wherever I go, and I have these very nifty panel carriers, and so if I have wet paintings, I can just pack them up and bring them all, and it all fits into my carry-on luggage. So that's what I do. I combine professional conferences. I try to make sure that all my conferences are in interesting places like Leuven or Amsterdam or Greece or Paris. And I do my 2 days at the conference, and then I spend the other week painting. It's a very nice arrangement. A couple of OPAS pieces. The one on the right is in the OPAS show. It's one I did actually in a plein air class. The one on the left is not in the OPAS show, but it was one I did with Mary Jane in one of her plein air classes. So this is the kind of work I do. I do have a gallery, Turner Studio and Gallery on Indianola, in which I show my work. It's not my gallery. Bridget Turner, who is a former president of OPAS, runs a wonderful gallery, one of the best kept secrets in Clintonville. If you have not visited Turner Gallery, you should definitely. There's a wonderful show there right now. And I will be having, I'm not sure what it's called, a one-person show? I guess, I don't know. I'm going to be showing my work at the Arlington Bank in Grandview, right next door to Ab India. So when you go there for the lunch buffet, check out the Arlington Bank. July 1st to 28th, I'll have about 20 paintings, and I've been crazed because I've never done this before, just the thought of getting them all framed and, everything. But it's fun, and I think that's really what plein air painting is all about. It's fun. You're outdoors and you paint. Okay, I would like to turn now to Mary Jane Ward and to Rachel Stern, 2 professional painters. You'll get a slightly different sense of how they approach plein air, and you should check both of these websites. Both of them have wonderful websites. Okay, I will turn over to you guys.
Okay, thank you, Tamar. So I'm Mary Jane Ward. My background, although I've drawn and painted my whole life, I was a professional ballet dancer for the first part of my adult life. So I did that for about 10 years and just drew and painted in my free time. And then I was living in New York and getting a little burnt out on all of the auditions and not very interesting dance jobs, and finding that I wasn't getting what I wanted out of my paintings. So I started looking for instruction and was introduced to a small studio, an atelier style studio called Grand Central Atelier. And I started studying there in their part-time classes, and it's an approach to teaching drawing and painting that is taken from um, let's see, a school in Paris developed a method for teaching drawing and painting in the 1800s. And so you're drawing from classical sculptures and then moving on to drawing from life. But then while I was studying in this school, I learned that they also had started a group called the Hudson River Fellowship. And I was really inspired to join that, or to try to get into that, which was a summer fellowship for painters to go out and paint in the spirit of the Hudson River painters, and paint from observation, and sort of join in this movement of interest in great landscape painting, and how that can also serve the public's appreciation for the landscape and preservation of the environment. So I was really excited about that, and I got myself a little pochade box. This one in front of me is my setup. So the first summer that I tried this, I got this box, and kind of figured how could I pack up my paints and my brushes a little more easily and carry them with me, and tried it out on just a family vacation in West Virginia and painted. And then the following summer, I got into the Hudson River Fellowship and painted with about 20 other painters in New Hampshire for 3 weeks. And so it was a very rigorous program, because there's no teachers or workshops going on, but your own sense of competition with the other painters pushes you to get up first thing and capture the early morning hours, and then take a little break for lunch, and then go out and paint again, and then have dinner, and then everybody looks like maybe they're going out for a sunset painting, so out you go. And it's a really amazing way to push yourself as a painter, and feel really connected to observing the landscape and capturing how that makes you feel. So let's see, after that, I'm only recently moved to Columbus, so I've been here about 2 years. I'm originally from Oregon. And so since moving to Ohio, pretty much first thing, I think my mom sent me a link to the Ohio Plein Air Society website and said, you should check this out. You're looking for maybe some camaraderie and finding fellow painters who love to do the same thing as you. So I looked into it, I went to a paint out, and I ended up joining. Last summer I did their plein air competition, had a wonderful time in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It's so gorgeous, and I can't wait to go back there and paint more. And let's see. Well, I could talk a little bit about my setup here. I have, so this little box folds up and goes in my backpack. Here's an example of a painting that I did at my family's home, near their home, looking into some sort of farmer's fields in the distance. So I mix my colors down in the palette here, hold my brushes there. On the stage, you can come up after the presentation and take a look. I have a little wet painting carrier, a couple other examples of panels. This was done at Whetstone Park at the Prairie recently. And then my brush roll, some gardening gloves for if it's cold and I need something grippy to hold my brushes but protect me a little bit from the weather. And then some little roll-ups for my paint tubes. So I try to keep my bag as light as possible, because when you're painting in plein air, you're maybe hiking around or walking around a lot looking for where you're most inspired to paint. So I keep maybe a limited number of paint tubes in my bag and roll them up, and that way it doesn't get too heavy, bringing every possible option with you. So yeah, you're welcome to take a look at that after the program. Let's see, I teach in downtown Columbus. I teach private lessons. I also teach a portrait drawing and painting class at the Cultural Arts Center, and I teach a plein air class through them, but we hold the class at Whetstone Park, Park of Roses. And do have a show coming up in the fall at Griffin Gallery at Creekside in Gahanna. So that's something to look forward to in September. Yes?
How many brushes do you typically use to paint the painting, and how do you clean your brushes between colors?
I use maybe 4 on a given day. I carry a lot more with me, but not for any good reason. So I do have a few up here to show what I would generally use. I usually start with laying in the base of the painting with one color, like a brown, just to draw with, essentially. And so I use kind of a bristle brush to draw it in and kind of lay out the composition. And then I try to mix the colors and start building the painting. I try to use larger brushes first and then switch to detail brushes as the painting goes on. And I use a rag to wipe off the brush as well as possible in between colors. And I also have this little carrier right here for odorless mineral spirits. So that helps really clean the pigment out of the brush in between colors as well. So I'll sort of, be painting all in greens and just using the rag to wipe off. And then I think, okay, I'm ready to move from green to the browns or something, and I don't want too much mixture, so I'll scrub my brush in here and then start mixing the other colors. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Now, you say you did brown in the beginning, perhaps on this painting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you normally try to do light first, lighter colors, and then darker, like in watercolors, or does it matter if you're using acrylics or oils?
Well, I usually work in oils, and I think generally they're actually flipped. Watercolor, you really try to preserve the white and the light colors, whereas oils, you maybe lay in your darks and build up your bright. So I don't usually try to leave it thin, except for when I know I have a big area of sky. So for that, a lot of my landscape paintings, I'll work back to front, so I'm thinking about it almost like a scene on a stage. So the backdrop is the sky, and then I want the feeling of the hillside to sit in front of that sky, and then the next closest layer, and then the next. So I would start by mixing my sky color and laying that in kind of as a thin wash, and then being able to build that up, and then layer the brown hill over the edge of where that sky just ended. Does that kind of answer the question? Any other? Sorry. Do you have a favorite season to paint? That's a good question. Mm-hmm. I don't think I do. I think that, being a plein air painter, you get really immersed in the season that's happening, and then you notice the changes so much. You would think that maybe spring is just obviously all green, or middle of summer, just green. And that's the case, but there's also constantly these changing plants. I also really like doing close-up studies of plants. This painting of Whetstone Park on the bottom of the stage is a nice example where I will go back there and notice that prairie there, when I was painting there maybe a week and a half ago, all of this cow parsnip, which are like these giant Queen Anne's lace, they were all blooming, and they're 5 feet tall, and then in a couple weeks they'll be gone. So there's just this kind of, you see something and you think, oh, I've got to catch that, because I know, next week when I get out here it's going to be gone. So I guess I don't really have a favorite, except that I do feel like so much changes so constantly that there's always something kind of interesting or intriguing that'll interest me about the season. So. Mm-hmm. I watched that and would practice painting as a kid, watching that, and the show that came on after him, a woman who painted teapots and roses quite a bit. And I think that there is definitely a lot of painting skill that goes into that. But as far as my own experience, I don't really turn to him for much instruction anymore. What was it?
A difference that I would notice would be the connection to the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
In it, so I
Mm-hmm.
was laughing and joking about that. But you mentioned maybe around the Hudson River
Mm-hmm.
school about appreciating the landscape,
Mm-hmm.
both as a painter and then how it lives on as a painting to almost educate or just
Yeah, yeah.
and then learning about the environment. You named some plants that
Yeah, it's I think, yeah, that difference of working in the field, direct from nature, you get so intrigued by what you're painting, you start learning about it more. If people stop by and see you painting, they suddenly have a new appreciation for that scene, you know. And then if I'm painting a plant that I have no idea what it is, then I go and research it. So it does feel much more involved than just maybe working from a photo or even a stock kind of imagined scene. It just, I guess I'm not as interested in it. It doesn't push me to make a painting to just imagine, well, I'll put a happy mountain here and some little trees there. So.
Do you limit yourself to that size canvas, or have you worked in bigger or smaller spaces?
When I started plein air, I worked always smaller. So 5x7s or 6x8s were kind of my limit. Maybe if I was feeling really ambitious, I would get up to 8x10 inches. As time has passed and I've been just painting more and more outside, I find I am working faster. I can cover more area more confidently, I think. And maybe I'm just, my color mixing is getting faster. It's kind of like slowly you take another bite and you think, okay, I can push myself to a little bit larger canvas, a little bit larger. Some of the large plein air paintings, I think, are also spots that painters will return to. So they'll do a whole day of laying in the painting and then leave. And then the next time the weather is right, they go back to the spot and set up. And so then you're working with, sort of staying true to your first impression or the first, light conditions that you started with, but then using the landscape as a reference to keep informing the painting and make sure that you're capturing kind of what's there, but not trying to chase what might change about it, like the clouds or that kind of thing. This might be a good time to transition to Rachel talking, and then we can, of course, continue to answer questions afterward. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Sure. One more thing that's coming up for me. On Sunday, I get to go down to, it's near Bainbridge, Ohio, southwest of here. The Arc of Appalachia has an artist residency program. So I and two other artists are going to be down at the Highlands Nature Sanctuary painting for 3 weeks, and it's a real honor to get to work with them. They are an amazing organization. I love their mission of preserving natural environments and stewarding the land, and so I'm really excited. I get to go bring all my supplies, and just be in it. So. And
Do they?
That's true. We do have programs. I will give a program next week on my process. I'll probably do a little demonstration, and then the other artists will have programs during that. And then at the end, on July 2nd, there will be a little show in the Forest Museum down there of all the work that we did during the 3 weeks. So without further ado, Rachel.
Well, I'm Rachel Stern, and I have been interested in art and art history almost all my life. I've painted on and off for the last 30 years. I've been a professional artist, painting, taking classes. I've taken classes at Columbus College of Art and Design. I've studied in various workshops. I just finished a workshop 2 weeks ago. We were in Zanesville with Fred Fochman and Neil Riley, who used to Neil was a professor at CCAD. We had a 3-day workshop in Zanesville. 2 of the days it rained, and we went out and painted anyway. We stood at one of the parks we were at had a shelter, and so we could stand under the shelter and paint. On the second day, we weren't sure it was going to rain, so we were outside in a park that overlooks the Y Bridge in Zanesville, if you know that, doing this terrific painting. It started to rain, and all of a sudden, the paint box, which is over there, the paint box filled with water. So we dumped it out, and we closed it up and went to lunch. And then came back in the afternoon, stood under a shelter, and painted some more. And I'd never painted in the rain before. I'm not sure that I would do that again. Water and oil don't really mix, which is probably good. But most of my painting is done by looking at the landscape and seeing the shapes and the colors in the landscape. So I'm trying not to think I'm doing a tree or a hill or a building. I'm just doing shapes that might at some point create the landscape. I love being in the landscape. I feel like I become part of it. I don't, when I'm out there painting, I'm really not aware of what's going on around me. If I'm somewhere and people will come up and talk to me, and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know you were there. But I do want to stop and talk to them because I want other people to be interested and curious about art and how it's done, what all the materials are, and ask any questions that they want to. And I paint, you asked the question of Mary Jane about favorite seasons. I like, the only season that I really don't go out and paint in is winter. I've tried it, and I get too cold and uncomfortable, and the paint for me doesn't cooperate. Now that she's shown me her gloves, I may try it again. Because every season has its beauty. In the spring, the green in the spring is different from the green in the summer, and then of course in the fall you get the various colors. But trying to mix the different greens, the different colors and values in the landscape is, for me, it's a very slow process. I use a palette knife when I mix my colors, and often I paint with a palette knife. I will use a brush. I will use a brush just to block in the very basics of the landscape, just the shapes of the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. And then I often start with the sky, but I might make that the entire painting would be the color of the sky. And then I work back and forth. I weave colors back and forth over the elements that are there. I also scrape a lot. Sometimes I use too much paint, and so I need to scrape it off, but it leaves some color. That leaves color on the surface. I usually paint on boards, and I will use boards and put muslin on them with matte medium that glues them onto the board. I prefer that to canvas because I like the solidity of the board, and I can really press against it. I usually paint small, 5x7, 6x8. Sometimes now I do squares because it's a challenge to make the landscape a square. Usually you think of it as a long rectangle. And so I like the idea of doing the squares. I also will prepare the board. Instead of putting muslin or linen on it, I'll just put gesso on it, which artists use to prepare their canvases. And then I will put a color on that, so I'm not just painting on white, although now I'm thinking maybe I should just try the white and see what happens. Let that light show through. And also letting some of the surface show through on my paintings. The paint box that I use is the Open Box M that's over there, and that size fits into the backpack that I have. I can put that. My paints, I have a plastic container that I put my paints in, and then I have the paintbrushes and a sack with the painting knives in it that I put into the backpack, so I have that, and I have the case that carries the tripod, and then I have the case like Mary Jane has that holds the painting surfaces. So, but I've learned that having a backpack makes it easier to carry everything out with you. I usually look for painting. I've been to parks in Columbus, but a friend and I also go out to different small towns in Ohio, and we'll look for different, she likes to paint, grain elevators. And actually that's one of the things that I have in the show is, it is a painting that I did. It is a grain elevator, but what I chose to paint was the truck that was beside it they store hay in. And so I painted that in a very small piece of the building that's near the grain elevator with the truck. I also, when I'm out painting, decide on the light at a certain point in my painting, not too far in. I'll see the light that's there, and I'll stay with that light and dark because the sun moves. And I found you can't keep trying to keep up with it. At least I can't. So I may stay out there for a couple hours, but I'm remembering the light that was there, that I get in when I first do the painting, when I first put down my shapes. I do lights and darks. Not the darkest dark, but something that lets me know where the shadows are and that there's color in shadows. Yes?
How do you decide when you're finished with the painting?
Oh, that's a really good question, too. Sometimes you don't know and you overpaint it. And then but when I paint, I stand up. I think we all do that. But I walk back and forth. So I'll put a few shapes or strokes of paint on, and then I'll back up and look at it and when it's done to the painting. And I just keep doing that. And at some point, the painting, it slows down. The doing of it slows down, and I back up and look at it for longer periods of time. And at a point, I think it's done. So I'll walk away from it, and when I turn around and look at it again, I'll know there might be something else that needs to be done. But then I usually stop. I've learned I know when to stop most of the time. It's always tempting because you're out there and it's usually pretty good weather and you want to be out there. But instead of continuing with that painting, you can get out another surface and maybe start a smaller piece because it's later in the day. I do usually try to go out early in the morning or late in the afternoon. I've learned, for me, it doesn't work to paint in the middle of the day because I don't have shadows. And I do like the shadows and the colors. And I squint a lot. I squint to see shapes and darks and lights. So my paintings they're not very realistic. They're sort of, I want the shapes to overlap, so there's some fuzziness. I want to try to show you the atmosphere that's out there. So I don't know if that answers that, really. And the other surface that I paint on that I didn't talk about is gessoed paper. I have a lot of watercolor paper. When I first started painting, I painted with watercolors. And I worked with an artist who was very loose with her watercolor. We would use wet paper, we would put colors on it, and then we would turn it around until we saw, it wasn't plein air. We would see something in it, and then we would develop that. And if it didn't work, we'd put it in the bathtub and scrub it off. And which is the way I am, very loose, so I loved it. And now I do watercolors outside now on either watercolor paper, of course on watercolor paper. And that's very different from working with oil, which is generally what I use. And I have thought about trying to start a painting with watercolor, and then put oil over it. It's just a thought. I haven't tried that yet, but I will do if I travel, take watercolors and do watercolor sketches. Then I can come back and it wouldn't be plein air either, but create a painting. But there's a freshness about it when you're on site doing the painting that, at least for me, you sort of lose in the studio. It just becomes a different kind of painting. It's I don't know, I can't explain it, but it's different. But that's why I just like being outside and giving that impression. It's not impressionism at all. It's what I do. It's not. But it's just seeing those shapes and colors in the landscape. And that's what I love, and I really want people to, I want to try to show you something that's very ordinary and make it special. Something you might walk by, like the flowers that were in the field that you might not see, but when you paint them, it gives you a reason to stop and look at them and think about them when you go back. So, and there are many, many areas in Ohio. I'm not native to Ohio, so visiting all the, a lot of the different areas, it's been eye-opening. I enjoy painting here. I enjoy traveling and painting, but I can carry more with me when I'm here. So I like that. I do have my work at the Sharon Weiss Gallery in the Short North. So my work is always there. I've had several exhibits there, and I'm going to be in an exhibit in Lancaster that opens in July, on the 15th of July. It's part of the Lancaster Festival, which is a music and art festival. And this is, several of us through the Sharon Weiss Gallery were asked to go to the Lancaster Museum. Is that the right name? Georgian Museum. It's the Georgian Museum, sorry. It's the Georgian Museum in Lancaster. It's a house that was built in the 1830s. It's been totally renovated in that style. It's beautifully done. There are articles in there and furniture in there that are from, not everything, but most things are from Fairfield County. So I've gone into that house and painted things in the house on site. It's not plein air, but it is on site. And so those will be on exhibit for a couple weeks in the Georgian Museum in Lancaster. So I've not done that before. And that was a challenge too, because this house is so large. It's, how do you pick and choose what you're going to do? But, and I did think about going outside at the Georgian Museum and painting around the house and in Lancaster, but they're buildings. I'm never quite sure I'm going to get the building right. So when the building is in my painting, it's just part of it. You're seeing it through the trees or, I don't know, not behind a hill, of course, but you're just seeing it. You're seeing part of it. Yes?
Before we wrap up and have the chance to see the work in person, could you tell us just a little bit about maybe the location of where the featured painting?
Oh, the one painting of the grain mill, that's in Fredericktown, Ohio, which is northeast. Small town with a grain mill. It's not used as a grain mill anymore, but there's like a hardware store that's part of it. And then the other painting, the orange rooftops, I did that at the Whittier Peninsula, the Audubon Center. I went out and painted there. And I've done other paintings there too. I've done about 3 paintings because they're orange roofs. I mean, they're buildings that have the orange roofs, and I liked, that caught my eye as I was turning my back to the Audubon Center and looking out over some houses with orange rooftops. And I like the juxtaposition of the orange and the green. It's like red and green, just show up. Thank you. Yes? Oh, there's one more question. I'm sorry. Did I talk too long? Oh.
We do have time, so if there are more questions,
Okay,
I have some
sorry.
questions for you guys, if no one
okay.
else does.
Well, it's perfect, 'cause the questions that I had both have pretty general. So the first question was, and forgive my ignorance,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the second question is, you mentioned earlier, it was mentioned earlier that there has been a resurgence in plein air painting, and I just wondered if any of you had any ideas of what this might be attributed to.
Oh, that's a good question.
Baby boomers is what I was going to
Really?
say. There's a certain, I mean, how should one put this? Aristotle says that in order to create art, there must be leisure time. That's the philosopher in me. And so one has to have a certain amount of leisure time in order to be able to do this. And playing golf is one way of appreciating the outdoors. But since what, the 60s or 70s, there was starting to be an interest in plein air painting, but it has taken off. In the 90s, 2000, I think Plein Air Magazine, the Plein Air Convention has fueled this interest. There's also, and I want to go back to a point you made, happy trees, happy mountains, right?
Yes.
There's a generation of people who think that you can create a painting in half an hour, a finished product, with no correlation to the outside world. But the plein air movement has really reinforced the integration of painting and nature in a way that you can still, at the end of a 2-3 hour period, you can have a finished painting. Sometimes it's nothing but a sketch. Other times you really are lucky and you have a finished piece of work. It's not always the case.
No, it's not always a painting.
Right, but there's a sense in which we have now a whole generation of people, I guess my age, your age, Mary Jane, you're not there yet, that
Lots of time.
want to be able in 2-3 hours to produce a work of art. And so there's a sense in which there's a gratification that is not achieved if you're working on the same painting day after day in the studio, especially a larger piece, 4x8. Although one of my teachers can knock off a 4x8 in 4 hours. I mean, it blows my mind. But there is that sense of I go out 3 hours, 2 hours, and I can bring back a finished work, right? So
And it's different from what you would do. You can then take that painting, look at it as a sketch, and do a larger piece in the studio if you and work on it over time.
right.
But you have a different sense, a different painting.
Resurgence of photography, a lot more photography versus
Right.
and something that takes longer is ceramics.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I've not tried that. I was going to try ceramics, but I love the oil and oil painting. And
Yeah.
Jane, you're talking about the resurgence back in the 90s. Back in the early 90s, there was another TV show on Artists East Beyond OSU, but it was John Stobart. It was called Worldscape.
Oh.
And it was when he used to, and the whole premise is it's not his studio paintings, the fancy ones he did at the set.
Mm-hmm.
But it was he'd just go, well, he said I could go anywhere I want,
Right.
anywhere in the world like that. And while it was a half-hour show,
Mm-hmm.
it really took a lot longer. And
Right.
he even said that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pointing out, and one of the things he was complaining about was these were in the first, I guess he did 2 series of them. And in the first series, they were talking about that there wasn't any, like in the art schools, everybody was now into expressions.
Oh,
Yes.
cute. Yes.
Yes.
They didn't teach drawing
The-
and that sort of thing. And this way, you get not just trying it, that you could do it. And he just said, and the way to do it is just go out and paint, just have fun with it.
And you
Right.
learn from that. You learn as you paint.
Can I go back to a point Mary Jane made? And I want to reinforce this because, as many of you know, you probably know a lot more history of art than I do. But certainly the move toward abstract expressionism, abstract painting, contemporary painting is far removed from what we do as representational realists. And so the program that Mary Jane was involved with in New York City, I want to reinforce, was going back to the drawing methods in the Paris conservatory, art conservatories of over 100 years ago. So, late 1800s, you had this tremendous detail drawing, and then of course you move through the history of art and you have all the contemporary stuff. There's been a movement back now toward representational
Yes.
realism, And I think the plein air movement is a part of that. Many of us don't have the drawing skills that someone like Mary Jane has. She has consummate drawing skills. And some of us would love to be able to do that, but we don't need that for plein air painting. But we do have that attention to the world, to nature as it is, that is absent in so much of the contemporary art. So you really have these two poles, the contemporary abstract stuff, and then this return to, I'm not passing judgment, and a return to a more representational form of art. Yeah, so I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Did,
Yes.
All three of you have talked about your affinity for the landscape and for the natural world. And I'm just wondering, within the whole diversity of your group, because I haven't been out to see the show yet, are there also people who are interested in plein air urban painting?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
yeah,
I
I
guess-
think urban paintings have been maybe a mental block for me of this, like, for some reason, organic sort of natural forms are more appealing and I feel more able to capture them, whereas I question my perspective skills or, like, you know, being able to get an accurate drawing of a building like you were talking about can be intimidating, but other people, that's kind of what they're drawn to, and, you know, so and more I'm trying to push myself and challenge myself to, you know, try more urban settings as well. I think
Yeah, if you look at the show, there are a number of urban paintings. My other teacher, Joe Lombardo, some of you may know Joe. He's a local plein air painter. He paints almost exclusively urban architecture, although he's doing a series on bicycles and fishing tackle now. When he does landscape painting, I personally think he doesn't do as well because that's not his forte.
A couple of years ago, in 2012, there was, as part of the Columbus Centenary, a show of artwork in public places, and one of the components was plein air painters painting in areas around Columbus, and then their artwork
Oh, yeah.
shown in those, you know, as a viewpoint. And, you know, so I knew that, but that was, I think, that was central Ohio plein air, and I don't know.
No,
whether
there's a
they're-
different, that's a different
I know
group.
it's a different organization. I don't know whether you're competitors or.
Oh,
No.
we just want people
We
to be outside
recognize them.
painting.
You know, that was one of the things,
I
as
thought,
part of the whole
I,
range of stuff in the public art
Yeah.
program.
I thought Deborah Dawson, I thought on the plein air site, Ohio Plein Air Society site, there's a snapshot of Deborah Dawson and 3 or 4 other painters crossing a street in the short north.
Yeah, that's
And I
the,
thought I thought that's what you're talking about. I thought that's what they were doing. So
Yeah.
I don't know that it was just through the Ohio Plein Air Society group, but
yeah, that's the classic Beatles photo.
Oh,
All 4 of them are standing on High Street in the same position as the Beatles. You have to go on the plein air,
Yeah.
Ohio Plein Air site to see that. Yeah.
Well, if you walk a lot of the streets downtown, I have to run downtown a lot.
oh,
Like, there's little places where plein air people have painted pictures on site of the buildings, and if you stand next to them, look over, you actually see, there's one that looks over by this, it's like on, it's on State Street, it's like a block away from the steakhouse, and you can see the top of the steakhouse. I think they're left over from this 2012.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so they painted on buildings too,
Yeah.
because they're now larger painting. What do you call
Yeah,
that?
there are larger paintings on buildings that they're about. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
These aren't murals, they're,
Yeah.
No, but there's also a set of murals.
Yes, there are, but they're not.
these are just little ones, and makes me stop running sometimes.
yes, hey Marie.
I think talking about the resurgence
Mhm.
and how it might be similar or different, I've noticed a connection or appreciation to the state and national park system, which is a very contemporary issue right now.
Mhm.
And I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, or if that is something
Right.
Oh.
Sometimes I'll see posts or those things hand in hand, and it's
Oh.
a really nice way to see artwork next to appreciate these.
There is a program, Painting in the National Parks. You probably, where you
They
can.
do have artist residencies.
They have artist
Yeah.
residencies in parks. Is that what you're? That's not what. I don't know if that's what you were referencing.
It wasn't necessarily a specific question, but curious about how, or just noticing if you've seen a parallel between like an artistic appreciation
Mm-hmm.
for the parks and the need to preserve those kinds of spaces in order to have that for many reasons.
Yeah. Good friends of mine who I met through study at the Atelier in New York, who then went on to be part of the Hudson River Fellowship. That's a really strong pull for a lot of us, is trying to, kind of use we have a little bit of a platform with, sharing our artwork with people as also a way of saying, without preserving these landscapes and making sure that they are taken care of, then we can't continue to paint them if something happens to them. So yeah, there is, I think maybe it just kind of comes hand in hand with a lot of people who are attracted to painting in the landscape, is a feeling of wanting to do what we can to help educate and inspire people to value that really highly. That's how I've been researching. I found another book on the Hudson River painters and was reading through it, and their role was really, they were introducing Americans to their country. They kind of gave people a sense of identity by sharing with them what the landscape looked like here. It was like giving the Americans this identity of, oh, we have this wild and beautiful landscape, and this is who we are. And so I think that there's maybe a growing interest in remembering that, or noticing that those places are still there to be appreciated.
Oh, yes.
Not too long ago at the Wexner Center, there was an exhibit of Picasso's works, and there was a film of Picasso creating a painting. Have you done that with Opus, showing an artist on a blank canvas, filming that and showing the process and even speeding it up so you can do it quickly? Would that be a good educational tool?
I mean, I don't know if OPAS has done it,
I don't know.
but probably through workshops they have guest
yeah.
artists do
Yes.
demonstrations.
We bring in guests, artists, at least twice, 3 times a year. We have workshops. They'll do a 3-hour demo. We had one in March at our March annual meeting, and he did a 3-hour demo. I have a video of that demo. If you become a member of OPAS, I can send you that No, I'm teasing, but I have videos of the past 5 years of workshops, because we do video them, and it's amazing to watch, working from the blank screen, the blank panel, and 3 hours later, a completed painting. Of course, if we take workshops with other artists, I mean, I know when I take a class with Mary Jane, she'll demo for us, and I'll stand there for an hour and a half and watch her paint before I even go to look for my place, because I want to see how she does it, how she composes the painting. So we do that a lot. We watch one another a lot. Yeah, very, very common. There are also, and I should say, there are numerous sites on YouTube now. Invaluable resource. Some very, very good painters have videos on YouTube, and you can watch from beginning to end how they actually put a painting together. So I think it's part of the resurgence.
What year was Opus founded?
Oh,
Oh.
2003 is what I want to say. 2002, there were 5 founding members.
They did a book.
And they did a
They
book.
different counties in Ohio.
Different counties. Each of the 5 painted each of the counties. I think there were, 88 counties in Ohio? And they
There's
appeared in a book,
And it's, yes.
and it's still available for sale. So it was either 2002, 2003. So we've been in existence not quite 20 years,
Yeah.
but we're moving in that
Gosh.
direction. Yeah.
Rachel, you brought up the point
Well, yes, because you are, and the more you paint, the better the more I paint, the better my memory develops of what was there when I first started. But when I, as I said, when I start the painting, I try to get the light down, and you can draw a sun on your painting surface, where, or I guess if it's behind you, you can't. But, so that you know where the sun was, or you can make a reference. I could write that down, because I didn't say this, but I always do a very small, quick sketch before I start, because you're looking at this entire landscape, and you have to narrow it down by finding a view that you want. Yeah, quite honestly, when I first started this, I used to take a photo with my phone of what I was going to paint so that I would know where the light was. But I can't take that painting back to the studio. I could take it back to the studio and do more on it, but then I would not exhibit it with the group because it is supposed to be finished. I think sometimes you can do a little bit in the studio, if that's what's been, if you're told with an exhibit, you can do that. But I did that early on, and it did help me remember where the light, how it's shown on different objects. I don't do that anymore. I just look at, and I can remember where the light was because of the way I do the painting. So, and other artists could do that. I mean, I think you use the tools that you have. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that, personally, as long as you're not using it to make the painting better in your studio, and then then exhibiting it with the group.
Well, but even that is subject to interpretation. Technically speaking,
Yes.
I mean, I've gone back and forth with people over this. You're permitted to touch up to 10% of your painting
And what's 10%?
at home in the hotel room if you're at a
what's 10%?
competition.
Right.
What's 10%? We've also argued at length about whether, let's say it's pouring rain, and you're standing in a barn, and you're looking out the window, and you're painting the scene outside the barn. Technically, is that a plein air painting?
Oh, yes, the barn's outside.
Okay, so
I can see
now
it.
we
I'm
take,
so loose.
so now it's snowing, which is my favorite season.
And you're looking
I didn't
out-
have a chance to say that. It's my favorite season, and I paint from my back deck.
Oh,
I
okay.
stand inside,
Oh.
looking out toward the river, because I'm on the river, and I do this amazing painting, but I'm standing inside my living room with the sliding door open.
Oh,
Is
the
that a
sliding
plein air
door
painting?
is open.
Is that a plein air painting?
I
I mean,
didn't-
so the whole
I didn't
question of
think
what
so,
is a
actually.
plein air painting,
But if
what
you're in your
counts
car.
and what doesn't,
Yeah, well,
is
I know.
totally
If
up
you're in
for
your car.
grabs.
Yeah.
So
see, I
if
think
I
it
use
should be.
if I use a camera, if I don't use a camera, if I do a sketch,
think
if I
it could
don't,
be.
all of those are subject to interpretation.
Yeah.
I want to really conclude, and feel free to come up and look at the equipment that we've brought. As David said, we are having another meeting next week, June 14th. Robin Roberts is our president. Jeff Stoller, of course, is our famous cartoonist from the Dispatch. Tom Cole, wonderful painter. And they will be painting outdoors on site from roughly 11 to 2, and then they'll be hosting a discussion from 2 to 3 in here. They'll bring their paintings. And so if you come early to the museum, you can watch them paint, or you could come at 2 o'clock and see the finished product, and then you can ask them all the same questions that you just asked.
And you'll get
of
different
us.
answers.
And you'll get completely different answers. Okay, so on your way out, please do take a look at our wonderful exhibit, and thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you very
Thank you.
much. You teach a class that a friend of mine is in.